Hi everyone, in this tutorial I wanted to show you how I made this architecture model based on ArchiCad or Revit in Blender. After this tutorial you will be able to export model from ArchiCad to Blender and make this stylized architecture model with no problem. So let's jump into ArchiCad first and I will show you how to export this model. So in ArchiCad I would like to export my model, so I'll go to File, Save As, choose the place where you want to save our file, and I will just change the extension to wavefront file obj and save. I will leave the default units and that's it. Now let's jump to Revit so I can show you how to export from Revit. So I opened the sample architecture project. I will go to 3D view to see how it looks like. As you can see, this is our model. And to export it, I go to File, Export, and I will choose FBX format. Now I just need to choose the name. I will leave everything else as default. I only choose the different place to save it on my computer. Okay, so I jump into new blend file and I will delete the sun and hide both camera and the cube for now by selecting them and press H. And after that I want to import a model from ArchiCad, so I'll go to File, Import and OBJ. Now I need to find the file. And after importing, as you can see, it's much too big. If I go into nPanel and check the dimensions, as you can see, it's 6 km long. So we need to scale it down. Let's press S and 0.01. And now it's more accurate size of 60 meters. And as you can see, it's wrong rotation, so we need to rotate it in x-axis by 90 degrees. So I press R, X and -90. Okay. So this is how I import it from ArchiCad, and now I show you from Revit. So I will basically do the same. I'm go to File, Import, but this time I choose the FBX option. I search for file. And as you can see, it's important. Revit separate everything into separate objects, not like ArchiCad in OBJ option. But it also import in the right scale and correct rotation. Okay, so let's make architecture model. I will unhide the ArchiCad model. And as you can see, I already have a ground object that I sculpted before in Blender and then export to ArchiCad. And now I'm bringing it back to Blender. But if you want to sculpt your own ground, it's pretty simple. So to show you that, I will hide the ground. So I go to Edit mode and I will select everything that has this material. So I will select this, select and P selection. Now I separate ground from my architecture model and I will hide it by pressing H. Okay, so to create the ground I will just unhide our cube and go to edit mode and scale it. I will place it in the middle and create something on the size. I think it's good. And now I want to sculpt it, so I will just go to sculpt mode. And as you can see, now I can sculpt anything because we don't have actually anything to sculpt on, only 8 vertices. So I would like to remesh it, and to do this I will use the remesh option. I will set the size to something bigger, like half of meter, and I will press remesh. As you can see, now we have a lot of geometry to sculpt on, And you can just use the basic brushes like a clay brush to sculpt the ground that you like. If you don't have any experience with sculpting, you could always check some tutorials on that, but we just need some basic shapes to have the ground. So to sculpt the ground, you can use the basic clay brush. To draw something more sharp, you can use a draw brush or draw sharp brush, and you can just switch between the direction if you want sculpt up or sculpt down. You can also change the radius and the strength, and if you want to make something smoother, just press Shift while using the brush. We don't need anything super realistic, because then we will slice it on the layers anyway. You also don't need to worry if it's not perfectly square from the top, because we will be working on that later. So I'm not sculpting a new ground because I already have one, but this is my result. It's of course triangulated from ArchiCad, but this is the ground that I sculpted before in Blender. And now I want to make the architecture model like terrain, so I will use the few modifiers. So to create the layered effect, I will add the plane, and let's scale it to match the size of our ground. It should be a little bit bigger, and let's place it at the bottom, lower than the lowest point of our ground. Now let's apply the scale by pressing Ctrl A scale, and let's add the array modifier. I'll use the constant offset in the Z axis, and to see what we are doing, I will go to wireframe mode. I think something like that would be okay. And now I would like to make this to match the shape of our ground. So let's let's hide it, and let's rename ground to ground. Let's unhide the slices. And what we need to do, so I need to add a modifier to our ground. Let's add a boolean modifier. And I need to choose the object, and this will be our slices. It can take a few seconds. And as you can see, our ground, it's now sliced. Okay, but we can't really see much because everything is flat, so let's add some thickness to it. Let's add another modifier, solidify. Nothing has changed really. The problem is probably with the scaling. Let's go to item, and as you can see the scale is 001, so let's apply it by pressing Ctrl A scale. And now everything works fine. But since we are making architecture model, it probably shouldn't be 40 meters in scale, so we really should scale everything. So let's turn off the boolean modifier for now. Let's unhide the slices, and let's select this free object, and let's scale it, I think, 0.01. And let's move it back into the center. And now it's less than meter, so it's more in the size of architecture model. Now when I apply the scale, of course, everything is way off, so we need to basically divide number by 100. The same thing with solidify. Now when I turn on the Boolean modifier and apply the scale, everything works perfectly fine. So we'll be no longer needed the slice mesh, so we can hide it in render. And if you don't want to unhide shortcut Alt-H, work on this, we can always activate the disable in viewport option, and let's disable in viewport our slices. Now when even I use the Alt-H shortcut, the slices object will not unhide. So the one problem that I had with our ground geometry now, that it's flat shaded. So I want to make it shade smooth, so let's select it, right click, shade auto smooth. And as you can see, nothing has changed, and this is because the slices object, it's still shaded flat, and if we boolean both of this, the flat shaded from this mesh is inherited by the ground object. So let's select this one and activate shade auto smooth too. Now as you can see, it's shaded smooth. Okay, so the last thing that I didn't like in our ground is that it's a little bit wobbly on the sides, and I really actually want it to be perfect square from the top. And we can fix it pretty easily by just unhiding our cube and let's match the size of our ground. I want to make it a little bit smaller than our ground because I want to use the Boolean operator. I think it's a little bit too big. Okay, that should be okay. Let's add another modifier. Let's search for Boolean. And we can use the fast solver option. And let's select our cube. And we want the inverted, so let's select intersect option. Okay, it works pretty well. Sometimes it creates some artifacts, so you can try different options in Boolean and maybe move a little the default cube. It's a try and error process really. Another thing I don't like is that weird holes at the bottom, but we can apply all the modifiers. I have the modifier tools add-on enabled, so I can just press apply all. But if you don't have this add-on, you can enable it in edit preferences. And in add-ons you can search for modifier tools. Now I will jump to edit mode and let's delete this two. And also maybe delete these 3 layers. If you want to add a little bit more layers at the bottom, we can use the slices to do this. Let's add a solidify modifier to them. And we need to check the height of the layer. So to do this, we can always jump to edit mode. In edge mode, select this edge to check the height, and to check the length of the edge in the mesh edit mode, check the edge length option, and as you can see it's 0.005. So let's change the solidify thickness. And we can apply this. Go to wireframe, go to edit mode, and Ctrl L to select linked. Now we can use the snapping and match the offset. Let's delete the top layer. And the last thing that we need to do is to add a boolean and we have extra layers. We can join it together. And now we have our base. Okay, so let's jump into camera and let's place it. I think these shots look pretty nice. Let's add a ground object by placing 3D cursor at the bottom, and let's add plane. And let's check how it looks like in render view. So let's switch render engine to cycles, GPU, and enable denoise option in viewport, and let's preview it. I will delete the material from ArchiCad, and we need to create some lighting, so let's go to shading, check the option to world, and let's add environment texture map. I will search for HDRI. As you can see, I have plenty of downloads already. I will put the link in the description to nice website with HDRIs, PolyHeaven. It has ton high quality HDRIs in different resolution, so you can choose one that suits your needs. I will maybe choose this one. And let's just plug it into background, and let's activate the render view. I want to see only this, what is in our camera, so let's press Ctrl B, select camera. If you selected wrong area bar accident, you can always press again Ctrl B and change the selection, and if you want to reset it, you can press Ctrl Alt B. Okay, so I think it's a little too bright, so maybe let's edit the exposure under color management. We can also reduce a little bit the background strength. And I really don't like the materials now, so let's edit them. Let's go to object mode. And first let's add material to the ground. And let's change it to a little bit darker, maybe a little bit of brown. Let's make maybe this material a little bit more dark and even more brown. Let's add material to the bottom too. And I will just change the color a little bit. And now for the house, I really just need two materials, the glass one for windows, and the rest will be the same material. So let's first maybe go to edit mode. In face selection, select glass and select. I had in ArchiCad make the glass material, so that will be easier to separate. And for now, maybe just separate it. In our main building object, let's delete all the materials and add one single new one. I will just set the color to full white. And in terms of our glass material, I will just add the transmission to 1 and roughness to something smaller. And I think it looks pretty good now. But I want to add some light inside of our house. So let's move 3D cursor here. I will maybe go back to the layout and add the light area. As you can see, it's a little big now, so let's scale it. And I want it to be warm yellow light. And it's a little bit too bright now. And let's move it inside. I want to have easy control of all the lights inside, so instead of pressing Shift D, I will be using Alt D. Thanks to that, when I change the color in one light, all light will be changed. So I'll be just using Alt D to placing the lamp inside of the building. And I will be checking in render view how it looks like. I think I need one here. Let's check in camera. I think it looked pretty good, but I think the strength of the global lighting is still too strong, so I will go to shading and the word setting, and let's decrease it a little bit. I think 0.34 is okay. And it looks pretty good now. So I think in the lighting and materials we are okay. Now I want to add a little tiny details to make the model comes to life. So let's first add tree, and then we'll add some twinkles. So to create the trees, I will use the Blender add-on that is inside of Blender. To activate it, I go to Edit Preferences and search for tree, and the name of the add-on is Add Curve Sampling Tree Gen. So we can activate it, and to use it, I will just use Shift A, Curve, Sampling Tree Gen, and you can play with the settings. You even have some presets, so you can choose any shape you like. And you can play with all the settings, but I think I'm happy with this one. So I will move it and add a new one to have some variation. You can change the random seed. And maybe one more to have 3 different trees. Okay. Let's scale all 3 trees down to better match the size of our model. And let's just place it here and there. And you can always place with the size and the rotation. I will use the changing the position of 3D cursor by pressing Shift and right click, and then select the tree and use Shift S, selection to cursor, to easily change the place of the trees. Let's check it in render view. I don't like that they are so dark. So let's maybe go to shading. And let's add them a new material. And we can cheat a little by increasing the strength of the emission. Let's add the same material to all of the trees by selecting them, and at the last select the one that has material, and let's use Ctrl L, link materials. Maybe a little bit darker. And let's maybe scale this one, rotate it, maybe change the position to a little more. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the results. So the last step before the render, let's add some peoples. So I have some people model find online for free, but if you don't have anything, you can use BlenderKit add-on. It has some free 3D models. I will put the link in the description to this add-on, but it works pretty well. You can search for humans, and on the right you can enable option free first, and we have some simple humans that we can use. So we can just drag and drop people and they will be downloaded automatically, and we don't really need a lot of them, just few. Okay, let's delete all materials from them, and let's add one new one and link materials to have one the same on all humans. Let's go to camera, and now we need to match the scale. And let's just place them here and there. And let's check how it looks like in 3D in render view. I think they are a little too dark, so let's use the same trick as before. Let's increase emission a little bit to make them more visible. I think they are a little too big, so let's scale them. By changing transformation pivot to individual origins, we can scale them individually. I will duplicate this one maybe and put it here, and maybe even one on the mountain. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the results, so I can just render it now. So let's change the number of samples to something smaller, maybe 256. You can change the resolution, but Full HD is good for me. And let's save the file, and let's press render image. After rendering, let's just image save as. And now we have our architecture model rendered. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new. And if you want to support the channel, you can always check my add-ons. I just published new one. No Dust help you create realistic dust results on any mesh. with materials and also geometry node setups. Link is in the description. Thanks again and bye.